A billionaire grabbed my wrist, looked at the scars I've had my whole life, and said 5 words that changed everything I believed about myself. He said, "I watched you get those." I stood in his huge mansion, surrounded by people who were worth more money than I could earn in 10 lifetimes. Broken pieces of a plate were on the floor, and my catering uniform was soaked with champagne. I was supposed to be invisible that night, wash dishes, carry trays, get paid, and go back to my small 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus. But instead, I was staring at a man who looked like he had seen a ghost. And maybe he had, because according to what he told me, I had been considered dead for 27 years. My name is Declan Morse, or at least that's the name I grew up with. It's the name on my driver's license, my social security card, and my work badge at Granger Furniture Distribution, where I've worked for 6 years. It's the name Pauline Decker gave me when she took me in as a scared, 7-year-old foster kid, with no memories of my past and scars no one could explain. But that night at the Ashby estate, I found out that Declan Morse might not be my real name. The scars on my hands weren't random or accidental. They were proof of a night that destroyed a family and pushed me into a life I was never meant to have. Darren Ashby isn't the type of man you see in magazines or on TV. He avoids attention. He built Ashby Industrial Holdings into one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the Midwest, then hid himself away behind the walls of his estate. He hosts one private event each year. No media, no cameras, just rich people drinking expensive wine and acting like the rest of the world doesn't exist. I was only there to clean their glasses. I was earning $50 an hour plus tips, saving for HVAC training so I could have a real career and not break my back loading trucks forever. I never imagined I would leave that party having found a father. Before I go further, here's something you need to know about me. I grew up with nothing. Not no vacation, nothing, I mean real nothing. I don't even know my real birthday. I was found at a fire station in rural Pennsylvania when I was about 2 years old. No note, no name, no mother waiting nearby. Just a quiet toddler with bandaged hands and burns so serious that doctors said the scars would last forever, and they did. Every day of my life, I've seen these thick, uneven scars on my palms and fingers. Some areas are tight, some are discolored. As a kid, other children stared. Some even asked if I had a disease. Teachers used to flinch whenever I raised my hand in class. I learned early to keep my hands in my pockets, avoid handshakes, and answer questions with the same simple lie. I was in an accident when I was little. But the truth was I didn't know if it was an accident. I didn't know anything. The social workers guessed, the doctors made theories, but no one actually knew how a toddler ended up with burns like mine alone at a fire station, with no one coming to claim him. Sometimes I dreamed about it. Not the fire, because I don't remember that. I dreamed about a woman calling my name, but she wasn't calling me Declan. She was saying something else, something I could never quite hear. And every time I woke up reaching out with my scarred hands, grabbing at empty air. For 27 years, that was all I had. Fading dreams and unanswered questions. Then I accidentally broke a $12,000 vase at a billionaire's party, and the man who owned it didn't get angry. He didn't yell, didn't threaten to fire me, didn't demand payment. Instead, he stared at my hands like he recognized them, like he had been waiting to see them again. And in that moment, standing among the broken porcelain with 100 guests watching me, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a little boy waiting at a fire station for someone to come. I felt like someone had finally arrived. What happened next changed my life in ways I still can't fully explain. It gave me answers I had stopped hoping for. It gave me a father I never knew existed. And it forced me to face the truth about my mother, a truth more painful than the scars she left behind. This is the story of how I went from being nobody's child to discovering I was the missing heir to a fortune. But more than that, it's the story of how I learned that scars aren't just damage, they're proof that we survived. And sometimes, if we're lucky, they become a path that leads us home. The morning before everything changed, I woke up at my usual time, 5:30 a.m. My apartment was cold because I kept the heat low to save money. I made instant coffee, ate cereal over the sink, and drove my old Honda Civic to Granger Furniture Distribution, where I had worked since I was 23. That was my life. Not special, not exciting, but stable. I supervised 8 guys on the loading dock. We moved couches, tables, bed frames, whatever came in on the trucks before going to stores around Ohio and Indiana. The job was hard and repetitive, but I didn't mind. There's something honest about loading a truck. You start with an empty trailer, fill it, and send it off. You can see your work. No guessing, no office politics. My coworker saw me as the quiet one. I did my job, helped when needed, and kept my personal life private. Most of them had families waiting at home. Wives, children, houses, weekend plans. I had my apartment, my savings, and my plan to get certified in HVAC repair so I could someday find a job with better hours and benefits. Growing up in foster care teaches you early that nobody is going to hand you anything. Every safe place, every opportunity, you build yourself. I had no inheritance coming, no family business, no parents who could co-sign a loan or let me move into their basement during tough times. Everything I had, I earned. I'm not saying this for sympathy. I'm explaining it because you need to know who I was before I walked into that mansion. I was someone who understood his limits. I knew where I came from, nowhere. I knew who my family was, almost no one. And I had stopped asking the questions that used to keep me awake at night. Well, almost stopped. The closest thing I had to family was Pauline Decker. She took me in when I was 7 and stayed in my life even after I aged out of the system at 18. She was a retired cafeteria worker living on Social Security in a small house near Zanesville. She fostered over 30 kids in her lifetime, but she always said I was the one who stayed in her heart. I visited her every other Sunday. We sat on her porch if the weather was good, or in her small living room when it wasn't. She asked about my job, my love life, and whether I was eating properly. She worried like a mother, even though she had never been my official one. One Sunday, about a month before the party, I asked her something I hadn't asked in years. Do you ever think about them? My real parents? Pauline set her coffee cup down and looked at me with those sharp, brown eyes that always seemed to see straight through me. I used to, she said. When you first came to me, I imagined all kinds of stories. Maybe your parents were young and scared. Maybe something awful happened and they couldn't keep you. Maybe they were searching for you and just never found where you ended up. She reached out and touched my scarred hand, one of the few people who never pulled away from it. Now I think some questions don't have answers, she said gently, and some answers won't bring you peace. You have to make your own peace, Declan. I nodded, pretending that I understood. But that night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my hands for a long time. Those scars were the only real link I had to my past, the only physical proof that I existed before that fire station in Pennsylvania. Somewhere out there, someone knew how I got them. Someone remembered the fire that left these marks. And even though I kept telling myself I had stopped searching, I knew that wasn't completely true. I had just learned to hide the search, even from myself. The catering job came the next week. A staffing agency I had signed up with months earlier finally had an opening. A private event at a lakeside estate. One night of work, $50 an hour plus tips. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask whose house it was or what kind of party it would be. All I saw was the money and the HVAC study guides I could finally afford. Sometimes I wonder if something else was pulling me toward that place, something I can't explain, pushing me toward answers I kept pretending I didn't want. Or maybe that's just the story I tell myself now, because the alternative is believing that the most important night of my life was a complete accident. Either way, on the second Saturday of October, I ironed my white catering shirt, shined my black shoes, and drove 2 hours north to the Ashby estate. I had no idea that the man who lived there had been searching for me since the night I vanished. The Ashby estate looked like it belonged in a movie I couldn't afford to see. I drove down a long private road lined with massive oak trees that formed a tunnel of branches overhead. When the trees finally opened up, the mansion appeared, stone walls, tall glowing windows, and a circular driveway where valets took keys from guests driving, cars worth more than my yearly salary. I parked behind the service entrance and sat for a moment, just taking it all in. This wasn't my world. These weren't my people. I was here to wash dishes and fade into the background, something I had become very good at. The catering manager, Donna, talked fast and avoided eye contact. She handed me an apron and pointed toward the extra kitchen. Only one rule, she said. Don't talk to guests unless they speak to you. And even then, keep it short. Mr. Ashby likes his privacy. No photos, no personal conversations. You're part of the background tonight, got it? I got it. Background was exactly where I liked to be. For the first 2 hours, everything was easy. I stood at a sink in the side kitchen, cleaning champagne glasses and appetizer plates while servers rushed in and out with full trays. The party noise floated in, laughter, glass clinking. Quiet conversations about things I'd never understand. Stocks, European vacations, someone's daughter getting into Yale. Around 9, Donna came in and said they needed help with tray service. Short-staffed. I dried my hands, grabbed a tray of empty glasses that needed collecting, and stepped into the main hall. The room was enormous, high ceilings, old oil paintings, antique furniture that probably cost more than my car. Rich guests stood in small groups, dressed in clothes I couldn't even imagine buying. I kept my eyes down and stuck close to the edges of the room, collecting abandoned glasses. That's when I noticed the vase. It sat on a marble pedestal near the hallway, a pale blue ceramic vase with gold patterns along the top. Even from a few steps away, I could tell it was old, valuable. The kind of thing museums keep behind glass. I carefully walked around it and headed for a table with empty glasses. I had almost passed the pedestal when a guest stepped backward right into me. His elbow hit my arm. The tray dipped. I tried to steady it, but my hip hit the pedestal. Everything slowed down. The vase wobbled. I reached for it, but the tray was already falling. My fingers brushed the ceramic just as it tipped too far. Then came the crash. Crystal glasses shattered across the marble floor. The vase struck the ground and burst into sharp pieces. The sound cut through the room like thunder. Every head turned toward me. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding. $12,000. That's what Donna had said the vase was worth. I didn't have $12,000. I barely had $2,000 saved, and that money was supposed to pay for my certification courses. Donna rushed over immediately, her face drained of color. She apologized to the guests, to the air, to the universe, anything that might calm the situation. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. Then I heard a calm voice rise above the murmurs. Everyone, please. It's only porcelain. Enjoy the evening. The crowd shifted, and that's when I saw him for the first time. Theron Ashby. Tall, silver hair, wearing a charcoal suit that somehow looked more expensive than every tux in the room. His expression wasn't angry. If anything, he looked almost amused as he walked toward me with steady, controlled steps. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head quickly. "No, sir." "I'm really sorry. I'll pay for everything. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'll cover it." He wasn't looking at my face. His eyes had dropped to my hands. My scarred hands were still lifted slightly from when I tried to catch the vase. Under the bright chandelier light, there was no hiding them. The calm faded from his face. Something else replaced it, something I couldn't name. His lips parted, and I literally watched the color drain from his skin. "Those scars," he whispered. "Where did you get them?" I froze. I had expected anger, maybe threats, not that. "I've had them since I was a baby," I said quietly. "I don't really know how." Theron stared at me like he was looking at a ghost. Then he stepped closer and grabbed my arm, not hard, but firm enough that I couldn't ignore it. His grip was shaking. "Come with me," he said. "Now, there's something you need to see." Every alarm bell in my head went off. I didn't know this man. I didn't know why he cared. I had just broken his incredibly expensive vase, and now he was practically dragging me somewhere private. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see threat. I saw something raw and desperate, something that hit me right in the chest. This man had just seen something impossible, and I needed to know why. "Okay," I said. He let go of my arm but motioned for me to follow. We walked away from the broken vase, the staring guests, and Donna's horrified expression. The sound of the party faded behind us as we moved down a long hallway, lined with paintings and old photos. Our footsteps echoed on the marble. A man in a dark suit joined us without a word. He was older, maybe late 50s, with a blank, unreadable face. "This is Boyd Cranston," Theron said. "He's worked with me for 30 years. He knows everything." I didn't ask what everything meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We stopped at 2 heavy wooden doors. Theron pushed them open and led me into a study filled with dark wood, leather chairs and a fire crackling quietly in the fireplace, but none of that stood out. The wall did. The entire far wall was covered in photographs, dozens, maybe hundreds, carefully arranged, carefully preserved. Theron appeared in many of them, younger, dark-haired, smiling. Next to him in almost every picture, was a beautiful woman with warm eyes and auburn hair, and in her arms in photo after photo was a baby. My wife, Theron said from beside me. His voice sounded tight. Vivian. And my son, Callum. I stared at the pictures. The baby looked like any baby. Round cheeks, tiny fists, soft wisps of hair. I tried to see myself in him, but couldn't. It was just a child. What happened to them? I asked softly. Theron didn't answer at first. Boyd stood by the door, arms crossed, silent. There was a fire, Theron finally said. At our home in Pennsylvania. I was away on business. Vivian and Callum were alone. He paused, his hands clenched. When the firefighters arrived, the house was gone. They found Vivian's remains. But Callum's body was never recovered. My stomach twisted. Pennsylvania fire, I said slowly. A 2-year-old child. Theron nodded. They told me the flames burned too hot, that nothing could have survived. I buried an empty casket beside my wife and tried to accept it. But you didn't, I said. No, he turned to me fully. His expression was full of something I couldn't decipher. I hired private investigators. I spent 15 years and more money than I can explain searching for any sign my son survived. Boyd stepped forward and handed him a folder. Theron opened it and pulled out an old document. The paper yellowed with age. A child matching Callum's description, he said quietly, was left at a fire station in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. It was about 60 miles from where the house burned down. No name, no ID, just a small child with serious burns on both hands. He was placed in foster care under a new name, and the records were sealed. After that, everything went dark. No matter what Theron did, he couldn't find him. My throat felt tight. I couldn't speak. Theron reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, worn photograph. He handed it to me carefully like it was something precious. My hand shook as I took it. The picture showed a baby's hands wrapped in white bandages. Only the tiny fingertips peeked out, small and pink against all that gauze. This was taken at the hospital, Theron said softly. After the fire. Callum grabbed something burning while trying to reach his mother. The doctors said his scars would never fade. They'd be distinct, unmistakable. He gently took my hands and turned them upward. The firelight made every mark and ridge stand out. The same scars I'd seen every day of my life. Hold them next to the photo, he whispered. I did, and for a moment time froze. The baby's hands were small, wrapped tightly in bandages. Mine were grown, pale and scarred, but the pattern was the same. The burns around the thumbs, the deep marks at the base of the palms, the shape, the placement, everything. Theron's voice cracked. I've seen those scars in my nightmares for 27 years. A billionaire. A stranger. A man I had just met. But he looked at me like I was the most important thing he'd ever found. Tears slipped down my face. I hadn't cried like that since I was a kid. If I'm your son, I asked, why did no one come for me? Why was I left alone? Theron exchanged a look with Boyd, silent, heavy, like a secret too old and too painful to speak out loud. Boyd nodded and walked toward a locked cabinet. He took out a key, opened the door, and pulled out a leather folder. 2 years ago, we finally got access to records that had been sealed since the night you were found, Boyd said. Hospital papers from the fire station. We fought for years to see them. He handed the folder to Theron, who opened it slowly. Inside was a medical form dated October 1997. I saw notes describing a boy, around 2 years old with severe burns. No parents, no ID, found outside a fire station at 3 a.m. But taped to the form was another paper, handwritten. Theron gave it to me. Read it. The handwriting was messy and shaky, like someone who was hurt, or running out of time, and the words felt like ice in my veins. His name is Callum. His father is Theron Ashby. Theron doesn't know what I've done. Please keep my son safe. Tell no one. If Theron learns the truth, it will destroy him. I started the fire. I couldn't escape what I became. But Callum can. Let him have a new life. Let him be free. V. I stared at the signature. V, I said quietly. Vivian, your wife. Yes, Theron's voice broke. She set the fire. He closed his eyes, fighting tears. When he opened them again, they shined with grief he had carried for decades. Vivian struggled after Callum was born. Postpartum depression, they said. But it grew worse, darker. I didn't see how bad it was. I was always traveling. I kept telling myself she just needed rest, but I was wrong. He paused to breathe, his hands shaking slightly. They said the fire was caused by faulty wiring. I believed it. I blamed myself for not being there. I never imagined she had done it intentionally. Boyd stepped forward. His voice was calm, careful. We rebuilt the timeline. Vivian started the fire, then panicked. She saved Callum and drove him to the fire station. She left him there with the note. After that, we believe she crashed her vehicle a mile away. Her body was found nearby, but investigators assumed she had been thrown from the house during the fire. My stomach twisted. The room swayed, and I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. My mother tried to kill us. Then she saved me. Then she died, alone while I sat outside a fire station waiting for you. Why didn't you announce a public search? I asked quietly. Why didn't you release my name or photo to the news? Theron's voice dropped almost to a whisper. Because I truly believed my son was gone. The investigators told me there was no body because the fire burned too hot. I accepted it. I buried an empty coffin next to Vivian and mourned you both. I grieved for you for 27 years, Callum. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He stepped closer and held my scarred hands. His grip was steady, the kind of hands that had built an entire business from nothing. I need to be absolutely sure, he said. Every part of me believes you're my son, but we need proof, something neither of us can question. Will you take a DNA test? I looked at him, this man who might be my father. I saw decades of guilt and hope fighting in his expression. If I walked away now, I knew I'd regret it for the rest of my life.
Yes, I said.
I'll do it. 3 days later, I was sitting alone in my apartment staring at my phone. The lab had promised results within 72 hours. When the email arrived, I couldn't open it at first. It felt like everything inside me was holding its breath. Finally, I tapped the screen. 99998% paternity match. Declan Morse, the foster kid with no past, was actually Callum Theron Ashby. I was the missing son of a billionaire. The child everyone believed died in a fire 27 years ago. I wasn't nobody. I had never been nobody. I cried until the room felt empty around me. The weeks that followed didn't magically change everything. I still woke up in my small apartment. I still drove my old Honda. I still worked long shifts in the loading bay. But something inside me had shifted. The empty place in my chest didn't feel so hollow anymore. It was filling with something new. Belonging. Theron and I agreed to move slowly. We didn't know how to be father and son, not after so many years. We had no shared memories, no starting point. Our first real talk happened in a simple diner halfway, between Columbus and his estate. Neutral ground. Theron ordered black coffee but didn't drink it. I ordered pancakes just to have something to focus on. I don't expect you to call me Dad, he said. I don't expect anything from you, Callum. Declan, whatever name feels right. Declan, I said. It's who I've always been. I'm not ready to let go of that. He nodded. Declan, it is. I just want the chance to know you. Whatever that looks like, however long it takes. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I've never had a father. He let out a slow breath. I've never had a second chance. For 27 years, I was a father to a memory, sitting here with you. It's more than I ever expected. So we'll learn together. And we did. We started meeting weekly. We talked awkwardly at first, full of long pauses. But over time, the silences softened. The conversations became natural. He asked about my life, my goals, my friends. He didn't try to change anything. He didn't offer money or pressure me into his world. He just showed up. I told Pauline everything. She sat on her porch swing, listening as I explained the party. The scars, the tests, all of it. When I finished, tears filled her eyes. I always knew you were meant for something, she said. I just didn't know what. Now I understand. You were meant to find your way back. I hugged her for a long time. She had given me a home when I had none. Finding Theron didn't replace her. It only made me value her more. 3 months later, I finished my HVAC certification. Not because I needed the money anymore, Theron made it clear. I'd never struggle again. But because I needed to finish something I started. I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. Theron came to the graduation. He sat quietly in the back row, dressed simply, blending in with families who lived paycheck to paycheck. When my name was called, he clapped louder than anyone. Afterward, he shook my hand. I'm proud of you, he said. 3 small words. They broke open something in me I didn't realize was still closed. Sometimes I think about my mother, Vivian, the woman who gave birth to me, who almost took my life, who saved me at the last moment. and who died alone not far from where she left me to be found. I don't know how to feel about her. Maybe I never will. She was sick in ways nobody understood. She made a terrible choice and then an incredible one. Both things are true, and both things are part of me. The scars on my hands used to feel like a weight I had to carry, a reminder of pain and abandonment, a question that had no answer. Now I see them differently. They are proof that I survived. Proof that a father never truly stopped searching. Proof that a story can circle back in ways you never expect. My name is Declan Morse. It is also Callum Ashby. For 27 years I thought I was no one. I thought I belonged nowhere. I thought the emptiness inside me was permanent. I was wrong. If you're listening to this and you feel lost, if you think no one cares, if your past feels like a locked door, hear me clearly. Your story isn't finished. The answers you're hoping for might be looking for you too. And the scars you carry are proof that you've survived long. Enough to reach the truth. Don't give up. Keep moving. Your turning point might be closer than you think. Maybe just one broken vase away. If this story touched you, like the video and share it with someone who needs it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the next one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. None of us are ever truly alone. I'll see you in the next one.